Hello, folks. This is Jacob Harkey. I'm here with Louie Repetto. How you doing today, Louie?
Very good. Thank you, Jacob.
I'm glad to hear it. And we're here today to discuss a couple of recent developments in a couple of different cases that are involving the Church of Scientology. So, if you caught our stream yesterday that we did on Louie's channel, we discussed the fact that Danny Masterson, Scientologist actor who was convicted on 2 counts of forcible SA in May of this year and sentenced to 30 years to life in September. Yesterday, Danny Masterson was finally transferred from the jail that he was being held at in LA County to state prison in Kern County. We had a
Yes.
good chat yesterday talking through some of the implications of that. And we're back today to not just focus specifically on Danny Masterson and his criminal case, but we also want to talk about some recent developments in the civil lawsuit that's filed against Danny Masterson, as well as the Church of Scientology, as well as Leah Remini's civil lawsuit a little bit, which we'll get to once we've covered some bases. But we'll take it one step at a time here.
Yes,
So,
exactly. I want to revel in the fact that Danny Masterson is officially in prison, and the Church of
about time.
Scientology tried to hide and cover up his um, personal attacks on these women that he did it so in such a violent way, and now they couldn't cover it up. They couldn't. They did their best, but they were just a hair short, and the Jane Doe versus Danny Masterson in the trial uh, is happened. I'm still in shock personally. The Jane Does must be in shock as well. I am personally still so shocked at how this all went about and this way of the Church of Scientology trying to cover up Danny's crimes.
Totally. I know what you're saying. I totally hear you. Because the church was successful for a few decades at keeping the women from going to the police and keeping Danny out of prison and keeping their own dirty secrets under wraps. But thankfully, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office was able to successfully prosecute Masterson. And as of yesterday, he is in state prison officially.
Yes. Goodbye, Danny.
So
Danny
part of
boy is
what we
gonna
want
have
to
a
be, oh,
lot of fun with his new roommate, Tiny, as Aaron likes to put it.
so part of what we want to be talking about today, like I was starting to bring up, is the civil lawsuit that has been filed by Masterson's accusers against defendants Danny Masterson as well as Church of Scientology. So this case has gone through a series of developments because the case that I'm talking about is Bixler v. Scientology. And Bixler v. Scientology, originally, the original complaint focused not so much on the SA specifically, but more so on the harassment that the women have received since coming forward about their allegations. Now, there was a proposed amendment made that has been reported on today by Tony Ortega. And I can see, Lou, you've got the article pulled up there. So thanks for that. So, looking at what we see
Absolutely.
there, the title of this article that was published this morning is Actress Trisha Vesey and Civil RICO added to Scientology lawsuit in proposed new complaint. So I think a good place to go from here is going to be to give a little bit of background on who Trisha Vesey is. So, something to understand about the Danny Masterson criminal case. Danny Masterson was charged on 3 counts of forcible SA. He was convicted on 2 of those counts, but those 3 charged incidents are not the only incidents of women coming forward detailing incidents of ABUSC by Danny Masterson. Um, One woman who was brought into the trial during the first criminal trial for Danny Masterson in fall of 2022 is Trisha Vesey. Now, the incident that she described was not one of the charged incidents in the case. So Danny Masterson was not facing any prison time, and the jury was not coming to any decision about whether or not they believed that Danny was guilty in her count. what she was doing, she was brought into the case by the prosecution as what's called a past bad acts witness to essentially testify to Danny Masterson's character and to help show that the incidents on which he was being charged were not isolated incidents, but they were a pattern of behavior that Danny Masterson had demonstrated before. And just to give a quick example of some of what she was talking about, I think that what we could do, we could start by just taking a quick peek over at. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used
You're
to
totally
working
fine. I'll
StreamYard.
just say while you do that, this is Danny Masterson, so-called celebrity of that 70s show, and Scientologist in good standing. He has never been expelled by the Church of Scientology. He has still, probably Scientology will go down swinging, and they will go down swinging as a result of their mislapses in the idea that they think they can beat the justice system.
That's right. I've got the tab shared now. If you're able to pull it up so that I can look at just a piece of Trisha Vessey's segments in the first trial.
It's on there. Do you
Yeah,
see it?
exactly. Yeah. So what we're looking at here, this is an article from Tony Ortega's website, The Underground Bunker, and this was published on November 10th as the first criminal trial of Danny Masterson was coming to a close. This title of this piece is Prosecution in Danny Masterson Trial Scheduled to Rest After Odd Turns on Wednesday. And in this piece, Tony details some of the highlights of the last few days of testimony in the first criminal trial. And he includes a bit about Trisha Vesey, who again was brought in as Jane Doe 4 to testify as a past bad acts witness. And she gives some details about the cast of the film that she had worked on with Danny Masterson being at a rap party. She mentions here that they were at the restaurant La Poubelle, which is on Franklin Avenue across the street from the Scientology Hollywood Celebrity Center. Quick note right there. The owner of La Poubelle is one of the people who wrote a letter to Judge Olmedo trying to urge the judge to lighten Danny Masterson's sentence leading up to his sentencing. She was also regularly in the courtroom during his criminal trial. Now, Vesey, as we can see here, testifies that she remembers Masterson carrying her down the hall with his arms around her waist and then later coming to and finding that he was on top of her and inside her. So, like the other women in this case, she was really detailing some brutal experiences that she unfortunately had to go through due to Danny Masterson and his behavior. Now, what
a monster. What a monster.
Completely
unbelievable how the Church of Scientology can just show, they can just know about these abuses that occurred and absolutely do nothing about it. Not go to the police, not go to the authorities about it. Like, where was some humanity within the organization? Isn't this an organization made up of real people? Like, someone in there must have gone, you know what? This is not right. We got to do something about this. We've got to go outside to the authorities. But not one person did. Are they all just, and I was in there. So what was it like? It was just, you have to follow the rules inside there. And but then again, I mean, it's just hard to fathom how this comes about with the Church of Scientology trying to suppress it and everything. Go ahead, sir.
No, I hear what you're saying. I just attempted to share another article that's
Okay.
the other article that we were looking at today. If we wanted to look at some of the key parts of that, yeah. So this
Okay.
is the piece from today that we started by looking at. Actress Trisha Vesey and civil RICO added to Scientology lawsuit in proposed new complaint. So, like I said, this is referring to the Bixler v. Scientology lawsuit and the fact that there's been a new amended complaint that's expected to dramatically change the case. So just to just to give a little bit more background about some of the hurdles that this lawsuit has already had to go through. I know that, Louis, you and I have talked before about religious arbitration, this phrase that we see right here. And that refers to the fact that every lawsuit that's filed against Scientology, Scientology attempts to pull out the arbitration contracts that all Scientologists are forced to sign, stating that they will not sue the church and that they will take any complaints or grievances that they have with the church into internal Scientology arbitration, in which
Yeah, and what
Scientology completely stacks the deck against the person making the complaint.
And what Jacob means by when the Church of Scientology is saying force someone to do it, it's either when you go on for your course and then you pay them $3,000 and then they say, "Oh, you just have to sign these contracts." And you really don't look through them. They're like 5 pages long with tiny writing, and you just sort of look through it, and then you sign it, and there's no notary public there or anything. You didn't know you're just signing away your right to even take a criminal person to a court and say this person did SA on me. You've totally taken out that right. And between Scientologists, they're only allowed to handle their problems, whether it's illegal according to the outside world or not, that they've got to handle their problems internally by a group of people that decide on the facts of the case, that are all Scientologists themselves. And there's supposedly this idea that this is an L. Ron Hubbard thought of thing, but no, it's actually not. There is no actual L. Ron Hubbard references. And I believe that, Jacob, you'll probably be going about this a little bit more later, but I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for giving some of that context there. And as we can see in the article right here, Tony mentions the lawsuit suffered a setback when it was forced into Scientology religious arbitration, but then an appeals court overturned that decision. So the initial judge in this case did attempt to do what other judges have done and say a contract is a contract. You signed that you wouldn't sue and that you'd take it into internal religious arbitration. So that's what's going to happen. But thankfully, the women were able to file an appeal, and an appeals court did rule in their favor, essentially stating that because the activities for which you are suing occurred after you left the church, you shouldn't be bound to the contract that you signed while you were in. So that was a great step in the right direction, because it was fairly unprecedented up to that point for any judge or appeals court to actually rule in favor of the plaintiffs against the contract motioning for
Right.
arbitration.
Yes, and the Church of Scientology forces the person to sign it by saying, "You have to sign this or you cannot do Scientology." And if the person is like a second generation Scientologist, like a kid of a Scientology parent, they would um they have to do Scientology. Otherwise, they get shunned from the family. So
Exactly.
these contracts they're signing at the very beginning of every single service, that the Jane Does did not eventually actually have to sign, but was these contracts that they sign are definitely forced upon people.
And I think that that could potentially come into play in potentially this lawsuit or maybe other lawsuits as an argument for why these contracts should not be considered conscionable, because they were signed under duress. Because the people who were signing them, like you said, they're not really given the opportunity to read them thoroughly. They're essentially told they have to sign them, or else they may have to disconnect from family and friends. We even saw that a little bit with yesterday when we were talking about the idea of a non-interpolation order, and the fact that Scientology attorney Rick Moxon went to Jane Doe 1 and her father, attempting to force them to sign a contract to make it so that she wouldn't be declared a suppressive person. It's just another example of the kind of lengths that Scientology will go to keep their dirty secrets from getting out into the open.
Disconnection is a powerful weapon that Scientology seems to wield over people.
Completely,
Alright.
completely. And so, as we can see in the article, this civil lawsuit was put on hold while Masterson's criminal trials were happening. But now that Masterson has been sentenced, we see here the lawsuit is active again, and attorneys for both sides said that they expected to see this new complaint, technically the second amended complaint in the case. So he goes on to say Trisha Vesey is joining the case. He goes through some of the similar allegations that we just looked at in a previous article from while the first trial was still going on. And looking through, I want to skip through to some of the specific additions that are added here so that we can go through some of the significance of what the implications of these might be. So we see here the defendants are members of a criminal enterprise within Scientology. That criminal enterprise includes many individuals, including the individual defendants, and a number of corporate entities, including the corporate defendants. So that could be referring to organizations like Church of Scientology International and Religious Technology Center, which are named in the lawsuit. Church of Scientology International being one of the main corporate entities that represents Church of Scientology, or that Church of Scientology can be represented as, and then Religious Technology Center referring specifically to the organization within Scientology of which David Miscavige is the leader. And that segues right into this second point here, which is defendant David Miscavige is the undisputed and unquestioned leader of this criminal enterprise and derives significant financial benefit from Scientology's criminal and unlawful activity. So I think that that is a really significant point to make right up front there, that the decisions that are being made by Church of Scientology International, or decisions that are being made under the direction from Religious Technology Center, all of these can be traced back to David Miscavige. None of those decisions are made independently of David Miscavige. Would you agree with that, Louie?
I would absolutely agree with that, Jacob, because when I was inside the Church of Scientology and the C organization, all things that had to do with large changes in regards to my organization, the church that I worked in on L. Ron Hubbard Way in Los Angeles, um, all of the major changes were always approved by Religious Technology Center. They were all approved there. Now, every single suppressive person declare that disconnects somebody, that has to be approved by Religious Technology Center. Every single person that gets onto the OT levels, the confidential parts of the Church of Scientology bridge, has to be approved by Religious Technology Center. So once you go halfway up the bridge, once you've paid $50,000, gone halfway up the bridge, and you are now clear, you have to get an invitation from Religious Technology Center in order to do these other confidential levels of Scientology. And every single level, you have to get approval in order to go one level up on every single level on a personal basis for these parishioners. Now, on the staff end and the Sea Org side, all of the major post changes, people being put into jobs, everything having to do with the new churches that they were opening, like literally everything having to do with them, down to what kind of motif and the chairs being used, were all being approved by Religious Technology Center, David Miscavige. And I know it can be traced back to that. I don't know what they're talking about it here specifically, but that is true. That is very true.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you for some of that clarification. I appreciate that. There's a few more points I want to hit on this article. Before I keep reading, do you know if you're able to move our faces so that more of the words could be seen? Like, would we be able to move both of our faces to the left-hand side? And are we, I wonder, could we make our faces a little bit smaller, or maybe just move the window, or move the words that are on the article slightly to the side? Sorry, viewers, I'm still getting used to StreamYard here. I'm still
I'm
figuring out
moving the
the.
boxes right now. So
Okay,
yeah,
right on. Okay, nice. Yeah, that's perfect.
yeah.
So, looking back at some of the additional points that are made in here, they mentioned Scientology's self-described governing philosophy is make money, make more money, make other people produce so as to make more money. And we've seen time and time again, many people who have left the church describe that as a fundamental goal of the aims of Scientology. You see, many of Scientology's criminal enterprises' money-making schemes are criminal in nature. It routinely and systematically engages in fraud, human trafficking, identity theft, and money laundering to fill its coffers and enrich its leadership. So right there, we've got a handful of crimes spelled out right from the beginning of what this lawsuit is going to be going into and what allegations the plaintiffs are putting forward. So looking down a little bit, because there's certainly a lot that we could go through here, but I don't know that we necessarily need to go through each individual point, or else we might be here all day. But I do want to touch a little bit on some of the points that specifically reference Danny Masterson here. In order to provide itself with a patina, I'm not even 100% sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, of legitimacy, Scientology's criminal enterprise recruits celebrities to serve as its public ambassadors. Defendant Daniel Masterson is one such celebrity. During Masterson's long association with Scientology, Scientology's criminal enterprise used its resources to assist Masterson with his burgeoning acting career and provided him preferential treatment within Scientology. In exchange, Masterson publicly supported Scientology and its criminal enterprise by, for example, claiming Scientology cures depression. So I think that part of the reason that this point is really important to this lawsuit is the fact that because Danny Masterson was a celebrity, because he was on that 70s show, and therefore, by Scientology's logic, promoting Scientology and bringing attention to Scientology to a large audience, while also bringing in a lot of money because he was being paid well as an actor at that time, he would have been considered an upstat or an opinion leader and somebody that Scientologists should hold in high regard. And by that logic, if he does something violent to another Scientologist, when that Scientologist reports him to the church, they will be likely to be put through an ethics program and put through interrogation to find out what they did to cause whatever abuse they endured, because they can't possibly, the upstat Scientologist can't possibly be at fault. Is that kind of an accurate
I couldn't have
descriptor?
said it better. I couldn't have said it better.
Very good. Thank you. So those are some of the key points that we've brought in here. And then toward the end of some of the key points, just in this introduction section, it includes some of the key points relating to the criminal prosecution of Danny Masterson. We see on June 16th of 2020, defendant Masterson was charged with forcibly SAing Jane Does 1 and 2 and Plaintiff Bixler. Plaintiff Bixler is referring to Jane Doe 3 in the criminal case, who has used her full name in the complaints for the civil lawsuit. Now, looking down here, there's a new allegation, as Tony is pointing out here, which is in 1994, defendant Masterson essayed a 15-year-old girl, V1. V1 was a Scientologist and immediately reported the essay to defendant's agents, referring to the Church of Scientology. Defendants did not go to the authorities and instead concealed the essay to protect Scientology and defendant Masterson. In 1994, Masterson turned 18 years old. So this here is actually a new allegation which, to my knowledge, has not been publicly discussed much up to this point. This is something that's new to me. I mean, Louie, have you heard anything about that specific incident before today?
No, not until you sent me this article.
So this will be interesting to see what additional developments, if any, continue to come from this as there continue to be more hearings and more filings related to this case. But going on, we see in 1996, defendant Masterson essayed a Scientologist, V2. V2 also reported the essay to defendants' agents. Once again, defendants did not go to the authorities and instead concealed the essay to protect Scientology and defendant Masterson. The lawsuit then goes into minute detail about the allegations of stalking, hacking, intimidation, and harassment by the individual plaintiffs, some of which is repeated from earlier versions of the case. So specifically, the next few paragraphs will go into some of the more specific allegations of harassment that each of the plaintiffs in this case have undergone. So Hearst starts to talk about Bobette Reales, who is one of the Masterson accusers who was featured in the finale episode of Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, although she was not brought into the criminal case either as a witness or a victim in one of the charged incidents or as a past bad acts witness.
And this is what's her name again?
Bobette Reales.
And she has to do with this. Go ahead.
So she's another one of the plaintiffs in this case. So as I understand it, the
Okay.
plaintiffs in this case are now Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3 from the criminal case, Jane Doe 3's husband, Bobette Reales, another victim of Danny Masterson's, and then Trisha Vesey, another victim of Danny Masterson's. And if I'm not mistaken, that brings the total number of plaintiffs in this case up to 6. And Bobette Reales alleges that anonymous callers claimed she was abusing her children to the State Department of Child Services. These allegations were false, but nonetheless resulted in a lengthy investigation of Reales. And as Tony points out here, longtime readers will remember that both the Headleys, that's Mark and Claire Headley, and Jason Begay were subjected to the same harassing tactic.
Let
and
me
yes,
say
this is something
about that.
Yeah,
Jacob.
go for it. Yeah.
When it says in here that someone from Scientology allegedly called this child office on this person, right? Well, this is totally possible in the framework of, let's say that you have a public Scientologist and they have been getting some auditing, and it came up in their session that they have been cheating the IRS. And then the person has to go downstairs and see the security department of the Church of Scientology, known as the ethics officer enforcer. The ethics officer enforcer says to this person, you have to do a liability to us in order to get back into the good standing with the Church of Scientology. As part of your liability, there's step 2, which L. Ron Hubbard says is deliver an effective blow to the enemies of the group one has been pretending to be a part of despite personal danger. So the personal danger is where this comes in. This public Scientologist could then get the idea from the ethics officer saying, hey, we need you to rat on this person. We need you to find something about this person that is true and then go and report it on them to the officials. It would be more like, this is the situation and here are some suggestions from the ethics officer to the public parishioner as to some ideas that they could come up with that as an effective blow. So they might be shown some different other examples of times when people did psychiatric busting, they call it, where you follow psychiatrists around physically and you document their crimes by taking pictures and doing your own kind of like private investigating work. And then you report all this information to the authorities. It's called psych busting. Now, that could be translated into this. So you have a supposed threat to the Church of Scientology, whatever they're making up and telling this public parishioner about. And then the public parishioner goes and does their liability step 2. And this is only the first step of it, deliver an effective blow. They call, where they may follow her around and then see that she's left her kid in a spot for 20 seconds and he took a picture of her that spot, and then he went and he has to make this real for him in order for him to go back to session and not be like, oh, I just ratted on somebody who really didn't deserve it. He's got to convince himself mentally that this is all okay. Then he does the step 2 of his liability and so on until he gets through his lower conditions, pays back the IRS whatever he stole, and then he can go back in session and going up the bridge again, the steps to total freedom. Hope that clarifies some things.
Totally. And I think that actually fits right in with what we were talking about yesterday with the idea of an acceptable truth and the fact that some Scientologists will stretch the truth or potentially even just lie in order, but before doing so, they'll find a way to justify it and convince themselves or convince their superiors that what they're doing is the greatest good and for the greatest good. And even if that means that even if they're saying something that's not true or misrepresenting the facts in a case, as long as it's for the end goal of furthering Scientology's aims, then the ends justify the means, and therefore a lie can be an acceptable truth in that sense.
Boom. Mic drop. I love it. Okay. Should I put on the next one, or did you want to keep going on Trisha?
I wanted to just take we're right at the bottom part of this article,
Okay.
and I just want to read what the specific charges are here. Now that we've given kind of the necessary background, I think. But charges 1 to 3, racketeering. So those are the RICO charges, specifically relating to the criminal enterprise allegation. For violation under a new California law, giving victims a year to revive claims of SA committed by Masterson, domestic violence by Masterson, negligence, negligent supervision, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy to interfere with civil rights, wiretapping, computer data access, invasion of privacy, trespass, that's specifically related to Vessie's charges in New York, stalking, conspiracy, and loss of consortium. So that's 22 crimes that are being alleged now in this amended complaint. And that's going to open the door for a lot of evidence, a lot of testimony, potentially a lot of discovery and deposition to be brought into this case, that it's going to go into a lot of detail about a lot of the nefarious practices of the Church of Scientology.
Damn right.
So those were kind of the main points that I wanted to hit, specifically related to Bixler v. Scientology and the updates that have come out of that case for today. So do we want to now start transitioning to talk about some of the updates in Leah Remini's civil lawsuit? So Leah Remini's lawsuit, to give a little bit of background there, the actual kinds of activities that she's suing the Church of Scientology for are in some ways similar to the activities of Bixler v. Scientology, not so much pertaining to the recent amendment in the Bixler v. Scientology case, but as far as the harassment that Leah Remini has undergone, that's going to be very much in the same boat as the harassment that the Jane Does, who are Danny Masterson survivors, have undergone. Because I think that a lot of that harassment falls under the category of fair game, which if you are familiar with or keep up with the allegation of ABUSC that comes out about the Church of Scientology, you may be familiar with the fact that L. Ron Hubbard wrote policies referring to those who are declared enemies of the church, or SPs, as fair game, who may be tricked, lied to, sued, or destroyed utterly. Because once you're an enemy of the church, anything that can be done to silence you or intimidate you into silence is, again, the ends justify the means, and it's all justified in the eyes of Scientology and Scientology management. Because Leah Remini is such a big name and an outspoken defector of the church, she has definitely been one who has bared the brunt of a lot of Scientology's harassment campaigns, and this has gone on when she wrote her book and released that in 2015. She did all 3 seasons of Leah Remini Scientology in the Aftermath between 2017 and 2019, and since she's filed this lawsuit against the church, the harassment, as far as I can tell, doesn't seem to have gone away in the slightest. And what she's seeking is for an end to be put to these fair game practices. So that's a little bit of background on just what the case is about to begin with. But the news that came out about her case yesterday was interesting, and it brings up another name that we spoke about a little bit yesterday, and that's Scientology attorney Kendrick Moxon. And as Louie pointed out to me yesterday, you said that Kendrick Moxon, he was known within Scientology primarily as Rick Moxon, right?
Yes, I always heard of him as Rick Moxon because I actually went to the it was when I was in the Sea organization on L. Ron Hubbard Way, which is right behind me. Then I went there with his daughter, Audrey Moxon. She was in the Sea Org along with me. She was a director of tech services, I believe, and she was about 22, and she always talked about her dad, Rick Moxon, and or mentioned him. Oh, Rick, or is Rick here? Or down at Asho, like on the first floor, I'd hear something about this or that and Rick. So that's why I put Rick on here. I feel like it's more common than his proper name, Kendrick.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So Kendrick Moxon, his name actually did come up in the stream that we did yesterday. We didn't focus too extensively on him, but he did come up because when we were having a conversation about the non-interbulation order, or the agreement that Jane Doe 1 and her father were pressured into signing in about 2004, relating to the allegations involving Danny Masterson, um, Kendrick Moxon was the attorney representing the church who said to Jane Doe 1's father, "I don't want you to have to lose your daughter the way that I lost mine," pointing out that an SP declare order was already written up for Jane Doe 1, but that would go away and Jane Doe 1 would be able to stay in good standing with the church, and by that logic, stay in contact with her Scientologist family members as long as she signed into the agreement and did not do anything further with her allegations about Danny Masterson. So that's just another example of how Kendrick Moxon has been involved in covering up for the Church of Scientology.
Yes, I would say that
Go ahead.
point on Rick Moxon. Okay, so what you're saying is that Rick went to her and said, "You can either sign this NDA or we'll disconnect you from everyone." Is that right?
Yeah, I might be oversimplifying it a bit there, but essentially that was my understanding of the interaction. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And that was with the Jane Doe. That's not necessarily in this specific case of the tampering, right?
Correct. So that incident that came up in the courtroom in 2021 in during the preliminary hearings for Danny Masterson's criminal case. So not in the trial itself, but that was mentioned in the courtroom when the prosecution was still presenting evidence to the judge, convincing her that there was enough evidence for a trial. So I just referred yesterday to one of Tony Ortega's articles from May of 2021, where that was brought into where that came up in the courtroom while the court was in session. But
Oh,
yeah,
this
like you
this has
said,
to do with the actual Jane Doe. So this guy, Garcia, this all has to do with Jane Doe?
no. So yeah, sorry. I know that there's a few conflicting cases here. So we can go ahead and transition now to talk specifically about what's going on in the Leah Remini lawsuit. I think that the best way to make this make sense is
Mhm.
actually going to be if we can share. I'm going to pull up Tony's article from December 2nd, and I'll put that
Okay.
into make that so that that can be presented in just a moment here. I know it sometimes takes a second for me to have
Yeah,
everything in front of me at the
absolutely.
same
No
time.
worries. Rick
Um,
Moxon, I knew of him. I'd seen him a few times. He was always working inside the HGB, they call it, which is near where Scientology audit does his thing. That's where Moxon is frequently seen. I know that because I not only did I work on L1 Hubbard Way, which is the one right behind me there, I used to frequently go to the HGB in order to do special training that they wanted me to do regarding interrogation of staff members in public. So I learned how to do this confidential interrogation techniques, and also I learned about the Truth Rundown, which we should talk about sometime. It's from Florida, the Truth Rundown. I learned how to do the actual rundown at the HGB. All set there?
yeah. So it
Okay.
should be ready for you to pull up now.
Okay.
So what we are looking at here, this is a piece written by Tony Ortega that was published December 2nd of 2023. So just a few weeks ago. The title of the article is "In Leah Remini's Papers, Scientology Attorney Accused of Interfering in Criminal Case." So I'll try to keep the commentary here to the pieces that are most poignant and most relevant to what we'll be going into today. But in yesterday's filing, yesterday is referring to December 1st. So again, a few weeks ago, Leah's attorneys filed a pretty incredible example of this, what he's talking about here. The fact that Scientology does what it can to portray Leah as responsible for cases of people threatening or harming Scientologists or Scientology facilities. So specifically in this case, there is a criminal case against a troubled man named Armando Garcia, who was arrested on May 16th, 2022 on L. Ron Hubbard Way at the Big Blue Scientology Los Angeles headquarters. So Garcia had been passing out anti-Scientology flyers on a few occasions, and on this particular occasion, on May 16th, he was told to stop littering by a Scientology security guard. He attempted to turn his car around on L. Ron Hubbard Way, but the Scientology guard accused him of attempting to run him over. Garcia denied this, but because he had a criminal record, apparently, the DA's office took the accusation seriously and decided to prosecute him for assault with a deadly weapon, the deadly weapon being his car. And Garcia spent nearly a year in jail awaiting trial, but as jury selection was happening this April, something remarkable happened. So what happened here and what we'll read through here involves Kendrick Moxon, and it involves Kendrick Moxon, the way that he represents himself. Well, we can kind of read it and then make sense of it as we're going through here. But Scientology attorney, yeah, go ahead.
What
Sorry,
case
what
does
was
this
that?
have to do with? What
So
case?
this has to do with the criminal case against Armando Garcia. This is so Armando Garcia is here in court, but what makes this interesting is that Rick Moxon tries to come in and help Armando Garcia get his charge lessened if he admits, essentially, that he was inspired to commit this crime by Leah Remini, which is a total stretch.
So that's how Leah Remini is saying this is how Rick Moxon manipulated this witness or tried to.
Yeah.
And so I'm suing him. I'm suing them for this.
Yeah, exactly. Is it making a little bit more sense now?
Yes, thank you.
I know that sometimes the way that the dots connect in these legal filings where multiple cases are referenced, I know that it can sometimes be tricky. That's why I wanted to hit a few points here to make sure that things are making sense. So yeah, what Tony is referring to here and what the transcript that he's got portions of here, these are from these come from the criminal hearings taking place in Armando Garcia's criminal case. So Kendrick Moxon showed up and tried to, so let's see here. Garcia's public defender, Adela Gorgon, accused Scientology attorney Kendrick Moxon of trying to convince her client to say that he was motivated by Leah Remini and her series, Scientology in the Aftermath, which had originally aired on the A&E network. And Judge Michael Garcia says to Kendrick Moxon, the court has been informed you may be a witness in this case. For the record, I will have you state your name. My name is Kendrick Moxon, and I'm counsel for the victims, the Church of Scientology, and the individual victim. The judge points out then the only victim is the security officer. So this is part of what I wanted to point out that I think is interesting here is that Kendrick Moxon says that he is counsel for the victims, plural, the church, and the individual security guard is what he's talking about. And the judge is pointing out, now the church is not actually technically a victim in this criminal case. That's not Armando Garcia. He's not being criminally charged with attacking the church. He's being criminally charged for attempted assault with a deadly weapon, but specifically of the security guard, not with the church. So that's part of why I think it's interesting that Kendrick Moxon is coming in to say that he is counsel for the victims, one of those victims being the church. But the judge sets the record straight and says the only victim is the security officer. Moxon says, for the record, I wasn't a witness to anything. I don't know why. It may not be accurate that I will be called. I can't imagine why I would be called. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting the important points here. But the judge says, let me for the record ask Ms. Gorgon, so that's the public defender that's defending Armando Garcia, and Ms. Gazarian, the deputy district attorney, to state for the record what was brought to the court's attention and why the defense believes this individual that the court has excluded may be a witness in the case.
So yes, the judge needs him.
Mm-hmm. So the public defender defending Mr. Garcia says, the individual, Mr. Kendrick Moxon, approached me on, I believe, Thursday when we were sent here for trial. He approached me individually outside of the court doors, and he told me that he in his capacity as the attorney for what he called the victims in this case, which he said was the Church of Scientology, as well as the main complaining witness, the security guard, he indicated, so Mr. Moxon indicated that if my client, Mr. Armando Garcia, were to go on the record in some form or fashion to either state to the court during a plea or put in writing, he initially asked my client apologize for being present and also to indicate that he was present on the date of the incident at the Church of Scientology grounds and did what he did because he was inflamed by documentaries and a potential reality TV show that is currently airing or has aired on Netflix. So that's what Moxon, the attorney for the church, has asked Armando Garcia's attorney for. She wants Armando Garcia's attorney to get her client, Mr. Garcia, to admit publicly that he came to the Church of Scientology and engaged in the behavior in which he engaged because of Leah Remini's series. And that goes on to be explained
That's
in
messed
what
up.
I know. Yeah, completely.
That is like, he could be disbarred, right? I mean, put in prison for that, right?
I mean,
Rick
I
Moxon
don't know
could
that
be joining Danny.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I'm not enough of a legal expert to know about the intricacies of
Yeah,
what
it's all
lines
good.
can't be crossed, but also it seems to me that in a lot of ways this is kind of just the way that attorneys tend to behave, is by manipulating the facts and presenting the facts in such a way that their client appears to be innocent, and sometimes that's done by misrepresenting the facts of cases or trying to reference precedents that have been set by previous cases while not getting all of the facts right, or by misrepresenting some of the facts, or by making comparisons between the current case at question and past cases when really there aren't as many similarities. Again, I can't say that I'm an expert in any of it, so it's hard to definitively say what could happen or what the next steps will be. But in any case, it's really interesting to see the lengths that the church and the church's attorneys have gone to blame crimes on Leah Remini that had absolutely nothing to do with Leah Remini.
Yeah, it's so wild. They'll just make up. Hey, do they just get us? I mean, you just sit around a table, and like, hey, let's just think of ideas here, guys. It's all like, let's get the whiteboard out. Let's make targets. Let's make a goal. This is actually science. These are Scientology words. And let's brainstorm, get our battle plans together, and let's make a strategic plan to destroy Leah Remini.
Yeah, this wouldn't surprise me at all if this is some of what it does look like.
Yeah, and in Rick Moxon, I know that you said that he later testifies that he made a statement that he never witnessed tampered. He never said anything to Garcia or whatever this is that is being
Yeah.
created.
Yeah, so actually, maybe we can just go ahead and read through just the very bottom of this piece right here, and then we can switch to the piece from yesterday. Because what we see right here, just at the end of that little transcript that was quoted in Tony's article, says again, unless the complaining witness, and who's talking at this point? Is this still? Yeah, so this is still the public defender, the attorney who's representing Armando Garcia, the defendant in the separate criminal case. She says again, unless the complaining witness admits or testifies differently, complaining witness, it sounds like talking about the security guard, then defense would like to be able to call Mr. Moxon just for the very limited purpose. They attribute Mr. Garcia's behavior to show in the documentaries, and they are willing to forego their rights or get a lesser charge in this case because they have another purpose. And Tony writes that at that point, Judge Garcia pulled the parties into his chambers, meaning pulled the attorneys for both sides, viewed video of the encounter, and then decided to reduce the charges to a misdemeanor, them having been a felony beforehand. And Armando Garcia was sentenced to a year in probation. So this was a piece from the beginning of December, just pointing out Leah Remini's filing, in which she points out that Kendrick Moxon attempted to use her and bring her into this case that she was not involved in, to get the defendant in this criminal case to admit, yes, I did this against the Church of Scientology, and I did it because of Leah Remini. Now, that's going to be a good spot now for us to segue, I think, to the piece from yesterday, which I could pull up in just a moment here.
I'll just put that
Oh,
on for
actually, you
now.
got that right there. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
that is the piece. So we could just go through that one, except would we be able to just move our faces to the side again so it's easier to scroll on through?
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. So there's again a picture of Kendrick Moxon right there next to Leah Remini, and this is Tony's piece from yesterday, where this is essentially this piece includes Moxon's filing. That's essentially a response to Leah Remini's allegations that she made at the beginning of the month. So, and what we see here, yeah, we can just get rid of that. Yeah, continue reading. Perfect. So Tony says, we figured the best thing we could do is just show you Moxon's entire filing. Here it is. So I, Kendrick Moxon, hereby declare and state, and we see there he's been a member of the California Bar since 1987, member of the District of Columbia Bar since 1984. Is that what that says? Yeah. He has never been a member of the Sea Organization. Now, skipping ahead to number 4 there, we see on February 7th, 2022, a man drove a white SUV to the Church of Scientology campus on Sunset Boulevard and L. Ron Hubbard Way in Los Angeles. And this is Armando Garcia, of course, that
This
we're
is
talking
that
about.
story you were just telling us.
Exactly. And he gives some of the details there in his own sworn statement. We see Garcia. Actually, could you scroll up just a little bit so we can see the
Sure.
top of number 5 there? Yeah. So Garcia was charged with a felony assault with a deadly weapon after a preliminary hearing held on July 29th, 2022. He was held to stand trial based on Chandra's testimony, which was cross-examined by Garcia's court-appointed attorney, Justin Page. Maybe if we come down a little bit again so that we can look at some more of Kendrick Moxon's own personal. Yeah, so here, number 8. If we look there, it says, immediately following the hearing, I spoke to Mr. Page in the court hallway. Mr. Page was annoyed that Garcia changed his mind and didn't take the plea deal, which would have allowed him to leave the court with no jail time, and in the process, wasting Mr. Page's time. I asked Mr. Page why Mr. Garcia was so prejudiced against Scientology. Mr. Page said Garcia told him he had watched the Leah Remini show for years and demanded that he, Page, also watch the shows to understand Garcia's views of Scientology. Mr. Page told me he refused to watch the shows, saying everyone is entitled to their own opinion, or excuse me, entitled to their own religion, and that the case was about an alleged assault, not religion. Mr. Page said the Remini show was the only specific Garcia voiced for his prejudice against Scientology. So again, we're looking here at Kendrick Moxon, church attorney's sworn statement that he submitted to the court in response to Leah Remini's allegations that he was engaged in witness tampering. So then I think it'll be good to look at number 11 and 12. Oh, and just number 10 there. He quickly mentions that Garcia's new public defender was Adela Gorgon, who we were just reading some words from in the last piece that we looked at. On April 6th, 2023, Moxon was present at the scheduled courtroom and was introduced to Ms. Gorgon as a new defense counsel. I told her I understood Garcia had become prejudiced by watching the Remini show. I told her many others had been inflamed by the show and committed criminal acts and threats against the church. I told her I didn't know if the victim had any influence, but that if my understanding was correct, I would be willing to inform the district attorney's office that Mr. Chandra had no objection to a misdemeanor deal if Garcia truthfully revealed on the record what caused his hatred. So we're seeing a lot of the same language and a lot of the same attitude being put forth here, that it was Leah Remini's show which caused the incident that took place in 2022 involving Armando Garcia. We can keep scrolling down a bit. We see 12 and 13 there. I mean, we could be really thorough. I just want to make sure that we're hitting the most important parts of this to tie everything together in a way that does make sense. But what he includes here, he also includes this full email that was written by Mr. Moxon to, what do we see here? So we received the email from Ms. Gorgon, and this is his response to Ms. Gorgon again. So again, to the public defender who is defending Armando Garcia in this case. Moxon says, to confirm our conversations, the evidence indicates that Mr. Garcia knowingly drove his car at the Church of Scientology security guard and was charged for that act. Mr. Garcia expressed substantial animus towards Scientology at an earlier hearing in the case, and I was informed that he watched the episodes and was strongly influenced by the show, Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, to come to the church the night of the incident at issue. The acts at issue unfolded thereafter. Many other persons have been inflamed by the allegations in the show, and then we could scroll down some more there. Allegations in the show and committed or threatened acts of violence arising out of it. A security guard at one church was murdered, inspired by Remedy, and that has been definitively proved to be a lie, as Tony includes a link to another story there. We don't have to get too into that one right now, but in light of that and the great harm caused by such persons, I confirm that on behalf of the victim, I am amenable to speak to the DA's office to recommend a misdemeanor or lesser charge if Mr. Garcia makes a truthful statement on the record that he was inflamed or motivated by the show to come to the church because of it. If I am mistaken and that the show was not what inflamed Mr. Garcia, obviously I would not want him to say so on the record. So I can tell that he's really being careful about his language there to make sure that he's wording everything in a way so that it's truthful to the best of his knowledge, and that he can look back at it and say that it was truthful to the best of his knowledge, because he includes that line in there that if he is mistaken and the show was not what inflamed Mr. Garcia, obviously he would not want him to say so on the record. Moxon goes on to explain that Ms. Gorgon did not respond to his email, but on April 10th moved to have Moxon excluded with false rendition of their communications. So it's clear that we're seeing some back and forth here with some slightly differing stories about the reality of what took place with Mr. Garcia and whether or not Leah Remini had involvement. We're seeing some discrepancies on the couple of sides here. Now, we see that the afternoon of April 10th, 2023, the plea offer was accepted by Garcia with a no contest plea, and Garcia was thus found guilty of misdemeanor assault against Mr. Chandra. I only sought the truth as to why Garcia was so inflamed against Scientology and that he would try to run down a Scientologist with his car. I declare under the penalty of perjury of the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. Signed this 22nd day of December 2023 in Los Angeles, California, Kendrick Moxon.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jacob. That was excellent reporting, I gotta tell you. And
Thank you.
We're gonna go through the comments at this point.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna exit out of the sharing thing. I'm gonna put this patina for you that used to be in Scientology. Let's put it like this. Patina, or for not used to be in Scientology, for those of you that are in Scientology and watching still at the end of this, the impression or appearance of something. So Scientology was putting on a patina as if they were doing XYZ when they were really not even in the same zone.
Gotcha. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, so let's do this. I don't know if I want to share that. Here, let's just put both of us up there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then are you able to click comments? No, not yet. I'll click them.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll just go through them.
Good evening, Hans Christian Schwartz. Thanks for joining the chat. And then he goes on to say that headspace is only understandable when you have the idea that Scientology must be protected at all costs. So yeah, I think that that's referring to what we were talking about earlier, and the fact that Scientologists will lie or use an acceptable truth if it's what's best for Scientology. There's my brother there. Thanks for joining, Zach.
Oh, sweet.
Right.
I saw that someone was watching on your channel, and I was like, hell yes.
Nice. Thank you, Jacob and Louie. This is Super Pup. Thank you, Jacob and Louie, for taking the time to bring this to the attention of the universe and breaking it down. Appreciate you both, of course. Love your collaboration, sharing your inside experiences, knowledge, and perspective. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining. David E. Taylor says Scientology is a human trafficking operation, pure and simple. Yes. CC says, Jacob, I'm impressed with your knowledge of the details. Thank you for your hours of obvious care for these victims and bringing this criminal enterprise to justice. Yeah, thank you for your comments, CC. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to amplify the voices and narratives I think are important. Oh, Cece, that was an interesting comment there. What was the one that Cece just
Nope.
put there about? Yeah, she
There we
looks
go.
like she says Rick Moxon got free solo course at AOLA with ASHO Training Awards, an enrollment error, but he refused to pay of go over to ASHO. He was a crybaby about it. I don't know anything about this. That's interesting. Are you
Oh,
familiar with that story?
it's simply put, the Church of Scientology sets up their businesses, their orgs, their business orgs, separately financially. And she's saying he paid for something at AOLA and he didn't want to go to ASHO, um, pay for it there or pay for it here. He was just being like somebody who constantly needs a hand holding, and like he's a big boss, like should have special privileges, is what she's saying. He thinks he has
Gotcha.
special privileges within the church to get away with things like getting free things, for example.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And thanks for the comment, CC. And then Free Zone Bone Phone, aka CO Bilf, unindicted co-conspirator Rick Moxon must be 120 years old. Is this an OT ability? I don't know if he's quite that old, but actually, I wanna address something in that comment really quick. Could you go back to the yeah? So he mentions there that Rick Moxon is an unindicted co-conspirator. What that's referring to is the Snow White program, which took place. I want to say that that was the late 70s, which this was an operation by the Church of Scientology, and
Jacob,
specifically, yeah.
if you just say how the Guardian's office ended, but that would be for Scientologists or ex-Scientologists, because this is how the Guardian's office ended, was the Snow White.
Exactly.
No one within Scientology ever called it the Snow White Project that I'm aware of, except for within the Guardian's office, which is like the current
OSA,
Scientology unit called Office of Special Affairs, just renamed, repackaged.
right.
Go ahead,
But
sir.
Rick Moxon in that when essentially I believe was it 11 Scientologists who were convicted once the Church of Scientology was caught with stealing government documents. Let me back up for just a sec. I know we just threw a lot of facts out there. So, in the 1970s, this operation that we're talking about, which I've heard referred to as Operation Snow White or the Snow White Program, but it was essentially an operation that was directed by L. Ron Hubbard to get members of his internal organization called the Guardian's Office, which was led by his wife, Mary Sue Hubbard, to enter government offices to disrupt government investigations into Scientology by stealing documents which mentioned Scientology. Well, this went on for a little while, but eventually somebody named Michael Meisner from the Guardian's office was caught, and a handful of Scientologists were prosecuted and convicted and ended up serving prison time, one of those people being Mary Sue Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard's wife. And all of the people who were convicted lied on behalf of L. Ron Hubbard to say that L. Ron Hubbard knew nothing about this. This was planned separately from him. And of course, it was a lie because it was actually directed by L. Ron Hubbard. But because his people lied on his behalf, L. Ron Hubbard was considered an unindicted co conspirator who was not himself criminally charged. And Kendrick Moxon falls into the same category. He was also an
He was part of
unindicted
this.
co conspirator. That's right. So
Now,
he's been
here's
involved in
what's
covering
funny.
up. Go ahead.
Rick Moxon swears, he just put in that statement that you read, that he is not a Sea Org member, when that couldn't be. Like, he is definitely a Sea Org member. He may not work and live with the Sea organization, but they have what is called an honorary Sea Org member, which is in the it's a definition within the Sea Org, and it's somebody who cannot be a Sea Org member because of their status with Scientology. For example, if they're a celebrity or if they're a lawyer.
This is interesting. I did not know that. So you're saying that Rick Moxon is considered an honorary Sea Org member?
Yes, he is considered an honorary Sea Org member, and because Sea Org is not even a real thing, like it's not even legally a real thing, how can Rick Moxon sit there and state the Sea organization, I'm not part of the Sea organization? Why would he put that in there too? Like, no one is part of the Sea organization, as I understand it, legally, right? It's like not even a real thing. Like, it's just a name of part of Scientology, and that part of Scientology is the people that work and live there, meaning like right behind me on L1 Hubbard Way, they work and live in the blue buildings. So that's all the Sea Org members, and David Miscavige is included as a Sea Org member. Now, Rick Moxon saying, no, I'm not a Sea Org member. Well, yeah, you are. Everyone, even the people that have taken LSD and are not allowed to join the Sea Org because that's a disqualification, even those people who are moving their way up the bridge and they become OT and they become OT8, like Rick Moxon in that picture, he's holding that frame. That's his OT8 certificate. Even those people sign a Sea Org contract for 1 billion years, knowing that they will be on their Project Prepare, it's called, where on the first step of your Project Prepare is just to finish out this lifetime. And then on your next lifetime, you join the Sea Org, because now in your next lifetime, you will not be in a body that is disqualified to be in the Sea Org, working and living there. So every one of these operating Dayton public parishioners, and they absolutely sign a 1 billion year contract when pushed to just sign them, because there's a statistic inside of the Sea organization where every time they get 5 of these people signing the Sea Org contract, they just have to sign it and they don't have to join right now. It can be much later. For every 5 of those, they get 1 arrival into the Sea Org, a recruitment arrival. And so that's why I say it is like a stat push, or within the Sea Org, I call it like a not a real thing where the person can join now or this lifetime, like in case of Rick Moxon, but he will eventually join in the next lifetime, and he agrees to that and he'll sign it. So I don't understand why he says sitting there saying I'm not a part of the Sea Org, you know?
That's really interesting. I actually had no idea that he was considered an honorary Sea Org member, or that was a thing. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. And thank you for the super chat there, Free Zone
Yeah,
Bone
heck
Pone.
yeah. We're gonna frame that $10 right here. So let's do like a let's do like a high five. Here. Hold on. Can you put it next to this side?
Should I put it on the other side like that?
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Oh, I don't know. I can't do it with my virtual background. I was trying to high five you.
Right,
I was trying to high
We're
five you.
learning. We're still getting the hang of things here. And then I see Kazri in there. I met Kazri at the second Scientology protest outside of the Celebrity Center.
Oh,
Great to
really?
catch you live. Yeah. Thanks for joining the chat, Kazri. Good to see you.
All right. That's all we're going to have for today. Thank you for coming on and explaining everything, Jacob.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for hosting this again. This was fun. And
right,
everybody who is in the chat, everybody who caught us live, thank you for joining the chat and being here along with us. To everybody watching on the replay, thank you for watching us call attention to Scientology's allegations of ABUSE.
Love you guys. Love everything. Love living this free world and this free life. And love you guys. Love everything. Love living this free world and this free life. And love you guys.